Hi, everyone. My name is Liza Ruggiero, and I'm the Director of Mindful Wellbeing at Greenhills. This evening, we are going to be discussing some practices that we can all use to manage stress and worry and a sense of overwhelm, particularly in the context of the election tomorrow. So we are going to discuss and review a few brain-based techniques that can be helpful as we look towards tomorrow and the weeks to come. We are going to hear from some students about different groups and support systems at Greenhills, as well as some specific tips for self-care. And then we will be practicing a little bit of mindfulness together with an exercise led by two of our seniors. So to begin, we would like to acknowledge the reality of this moment, which is that we are in the midst of a global pandemic. We are fighting for a racially just society, and we are actively resisting disinformation and striving for a fair election. And all of these things together are creating an environment in which stress and fatigue are expected and normal responses. It's also true that how we experience those responses may be very different based on aspects of our identity or environment or resources. So we both need to recognize the universally challenging time that we are all in, as well as the unique ways in which this is affecting us as individuals, and work to affirm one another's identities in this moment. So, a really concrete model for managing overwhelming emotions is called the ACT model. And this is accepting reality, creating a vision, and then taking action, putting it into practice. So, accepting reality does not mean becoming complacent. In fact, it just means seeing things clearly for what they are in this moment. So the reality is that we may not know the results of the election right away. And that is going to demand a great deal of patience and capacity to manage uncertainty in the coming days. In order to do this, we'd like to invite you to really pause tonight to create a vision. This means making a plan, and everyone's plan will look a little bit different. Hopefully, you'll walk away this evening with some ideas for civic engagement, practicing self-care, and reaching out to loved ones. And the third step in the ACT model is to actually take action on that plan. And that sounds obvious, but the reality is many of us fall prey to the G.I. Joe fallacy. And that was coined by Dr. Laurie Santos, the Yale instructor of the Yale Happiness course. Many of you have taken the free course on Coursera. And she has found that knowing is not actually half the battle, because oftentimes we know what we need to do. We know what's good for us in order to take care of ourselves and those around us. But we don't actually do it even when we are armed with that knowledge. So your task is to actually put your plan into practice at the end of this call this evening. So a couple of really concrete techniques that you can be thinking about. The first is name it to tame it. This comes from Dr. Dan Siegel, who studied the brain and, like many, was really interested in something called the amygdala hijack. And that just refers to the fact that when we are very stressed and in a fight, flight, or freeze mode, the amygdala is on fire. It's really active, and the prefrontal cortex goes quiet. And the cortex, or what Dr. Siegel calls the upstairs brain, is very important because that's where all of our rational thinking, decision making, and sense of empathy and self-awareness derives from. So we really need to develop some strategies to access the frontal cortex, the upstairs brain, when we are in a state of heightened emotional stress or arousal. And when the downstairs brain or the amygdala is really taking over is when we are most at risk of saying something hurtful that we wish we didn't say. And when we're just feeling those sort of overwhelming physiological symptoms of stress, that heart pounding and feeling warm, shallow breathing. So you'll be hearing later from some students about some specific strategies to disengage when hurtful or harmful conversations are leading us to a place of amygdala hijacking. But a really good first step is just actually naming what's happening. And Dr. Siegel has found that when we use language to describe our experience, we are activating the frontal cortex, specifically the left frontal cortex, where we process language. So this is really simple. It just means pausing and acknowledging this is a moment of fear, or this is a moment of anger. This is a moment of stress, of overwhelm, and just giving yourself some time to sit with that as a reality in your experience right now. So once we have taken the time to actually name our experiences, which we can do internally, we can do by journaling before bed, we need some specific strategies to actually help us manage. And the first is an age-old go-to, which is being physically active. Tomorrow, it might be helpful for you to be really intentional with your physical activity. So, for example, you might think about getting together with your friends and together, even if you're not physically together, trying to walk 8.7 miles or bike 8.7 miles in honor of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late justice who passed away at 87 years old. And this is just one example of a way that you can be both intentional with what's going on and your thoughtfulness around the election, and also being healthy and moving your body and connecting with others. So when we are physically active, we are actually purposefully using our limbic system in order to get that release of endorphins. The third strategy we'll talk about is taking time to breathe. This is the one that's easiest to skip over. It seems too simple oftentimes. But the reality is that breathing is a shortcut to activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So when we think about the nervous system, we have the sympathetic nervous system, that's the gas pedal, fight, flight, or freeze. And we have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is in charge of resting and digesting. So breathing, and in particular, taking a really deep breath in and a long, slow breath out, activates the parasympathetic nervous system and slows the nervous system down a little bit. And just doing a couple of those deep, full breaths can really be an effective technique for managing a sense of overwhelm or stress. Sometimes we need to channel the strong emotions that we're having, and this is the real opportunity of this moment. So our anger and stress tell us that something is not right. It is our body's way of communicating that something is going on that needs to change. So we can use these strong emotions as motivators to get civically engaged in whatever way is most meaningful to us. So I really encourage you in this moment to think about that G.I. Joe fallacy. And you may have heard about the Awesome Griffin page that is focused on the election and civic engagement in general, but maybe you haven't had a chance to check it out yet. And tonight, that might be part of your action plan, going to Griffin, searching under community pages for the election page, and really going through those resources. And it's not too late to get involved, even for those of you who cannot vote. Lastly, and most importantly, when we look at all of the research on human coping through big disruptions, we see that connection is the most powerful antidote. So self-care is so important. We need to take care of ourselves, but we cannot do this in isolation. We need to reach out to friends, classmates, family members, teachers, and move through this challenging time together. So many of you know about the hugging hormone, oxytocin. This is, in fact, released when we hug others, but it's also an endorphin that is released when we are in close connection. So, as part of your plan for tomorrow, and again, the days and weeks to come, think about how you can build in purposeful and intentional connections with those that you love and feel safe and comfortable with. So this might be family members, but it also might not be, in which case friends are going to be a really important source of support. Your teachers are here for you. We will be hosting drop-in hours on Wednesday when we get back to school via Zoom, for those of you who are looking for a place to process or connect. Some of you may find that just going through the schedule of your day on Wednesday is really helpful and you prefer not to process or connect during the day, and that's completely valid as well. The most important thing is that you are finding sources of support that work for you. So listen for our students to share a little bit more about some other student groups that you might be interested in getting involved in and some other sources of support at Greenhills. And make sure you stay tuned for our final practice led by our seniors. And just remember that all of this is in the service of a community that is resilient, that when we care for ourselves and one another, we are more effective at responding to our reality, and we are more able to enact meaningful and purposeful change. So we'll leave you with this quote by Audre Lorde: "You do not have to be me in order for us to fight alongside each other." This opportunity of the next few days and weeks is an opportunity for empathy, and that is going to require courage and the capacity to both listen and take action. So I hope you enjoy hearing from our student groups. As always, you can reach out with questions or just to connect at any point.
Hello, my name is Julian.
I'm Sophia.
And I'm Jordan, and we are some of the leaders of Peer-to-Peer, the Mental Health Awareness and Outreach Club here at Greenhills. It is so easy to feel overwhelmed and powerless when we think about the election, especially since many of us are non-voters. We want to acknowledge how difficult this can be while also providing a few resources and activities for ways to manage these feelings. We recommend having a go-to self-care plan for Election Day and the days that follow.
We're all going to need to find a balance between staying informed and taking a break from the news and social media. Your self-care plan may include some of the following activities, but also know it's important to find some friends, family members, or teachers who you feel comfortable processing and debriefing with. The first technique for stress management that we'd like to share is box breathing. This is a 4-count inhale, hold for 4 seconds, a 4-count exhale, and hold for another 4 seconds. I find that this kind of deep breathing, along with body scans and other kinds of meditations that you can easily find on YouTube, are great ways to relax at bedtime if a busy mind makes it hard for you to fall asleep.
If you find that breathing is a less effective mechanism for you, I'd highly recommend performing a surroundings check to be present in your current environment. Some things I personally do include trying to find all the colors of the rainbow or counting objects. Experiment with different strategies to find what suits you best.
Another awesome way to manage these tough emotions is to completely distract yourself. We are working online all day, and prioritizing self-care and downtime that is away from your electronics is really important. This could mean going for a walk or a run, doing a quick yoga flow, or even journaling.
If you're looking for further inspiration regarding mindfulness and self-care, Greenhills Upper School students have a free subscription to the 10% Happier app. You can find guided exercises, sleep and stress management activities, and even meditations specifically focused on managing election-related worry. You can find a document with instructions on the Center for Mindful Wellbeing Griffin page.
Peer-to-Peer is a great resource at Greenhills. We're here for you if you want to decompress or talk about mental health in a safe and supportive environment. We meet on Thursdays at 11:15, and we'd love to see you there. You can reach out to any of us if you have any questions about the club or want us to send you the Zoom link. Thank you.
Next, we will be hearing from SOAR, Students Organized Against Racism, about how to disengage from conversations that are becoming hurtful or harmful. At Greenhills, we value respectful discourse about the election. It is important that all students are developing the skills to meaningfully engage in informed conversations about the election, to share and listen to others' opinions. And it's also important that all students feel empowered to walk away from and end any conversations that are becoming hurtful or harmful to them or to anyone else. So Michael Keegan and Kairu Wende will be helping us navigate these tricky moments. And then we will be hearing from Olivia Johnson, who will share a little bit about affinity groups and how affinity groups serve as a source of support at Greenhills. And lastly, we will hear from Arjun Purohit and Sydney Keller, who will be guiding us through a closing mindfulness exercise.
Hello, we are members of Students Organized Against Racism, and today we're going to talk about disengaging harmful conversations. So first, let's talk about entering conversations. It's important to understand the difference between the subject pronouns I and you. Oftentimes we use you in arguments, discussions, conversations, and this is not very productive. For example, we might say you are wrong or you are ignorant, and this will not lead to a productive conversation. So enter a conversation with I subject pronoun in mind, such as I feel as though you are being ignorant in this moment. And that will soften the impact of some of the hard conversations that we might be having coming into the election cycle.
So another thing to kind of recognize when we're having conversations about polarizing topics is this concept of implicit bias. So implicit biases are biases that we may not consciously engage in, but that unconsciously affect the way that we view certain groups or topics. Regardless of where you stand politically, you have implicit bias. We all do. And it's important to remember this and recognize this as we're navigating these conversations.
So now let's talk about conversation types that may occur, especially within the coming weeks. You might have a conversation type that has conflicting facts. So both people will go into a conversation thinking that they're right, and this will clash and not necessarily lead to more production. For example, something that might be happening, especially into the election, is that Trump supporters might say that Trump has done more for African Americans than any previous president. While Biden supporters will come into a conversation saying that if you're deciding between Trump or Biden, then you're not Black. Both these things have been brought up a lot recently, and they're not leading to productive conversations. Another conversation type may involve inflammatory remarks. So for example, people might say, you're wrong, you must be stupid, ignorant, etc. if you think blank. And this, obviously we talked about subject pronoun you. This will lead to harsh conversations and not necessarily good discussions. Another type of conversation will be uncomfortable conversations, and these are just inherent within the current times. So you hear a lot of whataboutism. So what about X? Like people will use that as a deflection. Also, uncomfortable conversations may be, hey, you are X, what do you think about X? So for example, someone might ask you, hey, you are Black, what do you think about looting and riots in relation to Black Lives Matter? So these are uncomfortable conversations that are inherent within the current times, and hopefully we'll be able to ameliorate the type of discussion that will not be as productive. Exiting conversations is also very important. So it's important to avoid anger-driven exits, such as I'm not talking to you, this conversation is stupid, or don't bring this up with me again. These will be harsh and might result in like a bad emotions between the two people in a discussion.
So some steps for kind of disengaging from these types of conversations that are not productive are first just pointing out the fact that the conversation isn't helping anyone or anything. So you can use a phrase like, I don't think this is going anywhere, or I just don't think this conversation is productive. Before you change the topic or lead a discussion, it can also help to just acknowledge the feelings of both parties. So saying something like, you're allowed to voice your opinion, but I don't want to have a debate right now, or we both have our perspective, but this conversation is getting frustrating for me. Saying these things can really help make sure that you're being mindful of who you're talking to while also acknowledging how you feel. Something that can just be helpful in terms of this election season in general is setting boundaries for those who you continually get into conflict with. So if you have someone that you keep getting into arguments with, you can always say, it's not productive for you and I to keep having this conversation, or I'm not comfortable discussing this with you anymore. Please respect that. And then finally, as you're leaving conversations, just to make sure that you're not damaging relationships, it's important to leave non-aggressively. So saying things like, I think it would be best if we dropped this topic right now, or is it cool if we talk about something else? Can really just help make sure that you're leaving the conversation non-aggressively and people don't end up with hurt feelings. So if you'd like to learn more about how to have productive conversations about difficult subjects, you can come to Students Organized Against Racism. We meet every Tuesday at the 11:15 club meeting time, and you can find the link under groups in Griffin.
Hi everyone, my name is Olivia. I'm a senior and one of the student co-heads of BSAA, the Black Student Affinity Alliance here at Greenhills. In addition to the many challenges that virtual learning has presented to us, the approaching elections have certainly made our lives more stressful and turned our country into an often hostile environment. In stressful times like these, it is important to make sure that you are taking care of yourself and your mental health in all aspects. Affinity groups are a way for students across grade levels to connect with one another, which is an especially important quality in our current virtual setting. Affinity groups are not only fun social environments, but also serve as safe spaces in which you all can share your concerns. I want to remind you that checking in with your peers, as well as with yourself in this way, is an important step in self-care that we should all be practicing right now. If you are interested in connecting with an affinity group that aligns with your identity, you can find the full list of all the affinity groups on Griffin by going under Groups, clicking on the Find More tab, going over to the Community section, and then clicking on the Click Here to Join More Groups button. If you do not find any groups whose identities you would align with, you can also start your own group. To do so, please contact Tom Ward, Dean of Students, and talk with him about your interest. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Arjun Purohit, a senior. Mindful meditation has been very important and meaningful to me over my years at Greenhills, and that's what we're here to talk to everyone about. It's definitely been a tool to quell my anxiety in times of uncertainty or stress, or simply something that makes me feel appreciative, contemplative, and present. We feel that amidst the election and a lot of generalized societal anxiety, mindfulness can be a really helpful way of clearing your focus and lowering stress.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sydney Keller, also a senior. I have been practicing meditation for the past 3 years now, and it has had a profound impact on my life. Meditation has become a liberating skill in helping manage my negative thoughts or emotions. The ability to be more clear-eyed and focus on the present has made me resilient, especially during these uncertain and difficult times. Whether I'm on the public speaking stage performing, competing in cross-country races, or taking a final exam, it's easy to be derailed by unproductive thoughts, and meditation has helped keep me centered. So Arjun and I are going to lead you through a meditation. Sit in a comfortable position. If you'd like, you might close your eyes. Turn your attention to your breath. Begin to allow yourself to breathe naturally, noticing the rise and fall of your breath in your belly, or the temperature of the air moving in and out of your nose. If you're feeling anxious about the future, you might notice you've been holding your breath. Right now, give yourself permission to not hold your breath. You can let your breath be natural and fluid.
As you're breathing, you might find that your mind drifts away to the future, the what ifs. When that happens, it's okay. Try to be kind to yourself. It's normal for our minds to race ahead, especially when we are worried about a future outcome. Right now, we are practicing coming back to the present moment, taking it one moment at a time. Try to acknowledge your thoughts when they arise. And if it's helpful for you, you can label your thoughts. That's worry, fear, or anxiety. We've all had these thoughts and emotions before. Then gently let each thought go, returning to your breath.
Come back to your breath. Allow your attention to expand, to include your whole body. When we're feeling anxious, overwhelmed, or uncertain, we don't just experience these emotions in our minds. We also feel them in our body. Are you holding any tension in your body? Maybe your neck or back? With each exhale, see if you can relax those areas. Unclench your jaw. Let your face and neck soften. Drop your shoulders. Imagine allowing gravity to take over as you allow your body to sink deeper into your chair.
Now, turn your attention once again to your breath, just noticing the natural rhythm of your breath, letting it ground you in the present moment. In these last few moments of this practice, you might remind yourself that taking care of yourself gives you the fuel you need to take care of others. See if you can bring to mind someone that you care about, a friend, family member, or pet, and allow yourself to feel a sense of gratitude for that individual in your life. You might even allow yourself to smile, even just a little bit. Remember that we are all in this together. Take one more deep breath in and a long breath out. If your eyes were closed, you may open them. Remember, whenever you're feeling overwhelmed, you can pause to follow your breath, relax tension in your body, and bring to mind someone that you care about. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.